TV, radio and online, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB Newsroom. The SNP treasurer has been released without charge pending further investigation after he was arrested by police investigating the party's finances. Colin Beattie is the second person to have been questioned by detectives who are trying to establish how more than £600,000 in donations set aside for an independence referendum had been used. Earlier this month, the Scottish National Party's former chief executive and husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, Peter Murrell, was questioned for more than 11 hours and also released without charge. When questioned in Holyrood today, SNP leader Humza Yousaf hit back at the Conservatives.
It is brave, some may use another word for it, when it comes to talking about propriety. Your Prime Minister, your Deputy Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister are all under investigation by the Standards Commission. So yes, while we face challenges, while we absolutely face challenges, I'd rather be standing here with the opportunity to deliver for the people of Scotland rather than languishing in the opposition like Megan Gallagher and the Scottish Tories.
Well, the Scottish First Minister also set out his vision for the country in his first major policy statement since taking office. Mr Yousaf said the party will focus on equality, opportunity and community. He also announced a delay in the deposit return scheme for drinks cans and bottles, as well as a 6-month trial to remove peak time fares from ScotRail trains. The Home Secretary is set to declare the small boat crisis a national emergency. The move comes in response to a High Court challenge tomorrow aimed at halting government plans to house asylum seekers on an old RAF base in Essex. Braintree Council will attempt to secure an injunction preventing the transfer of 1,700 migrants to the Wethersfield Air Base. The declaration of a national emergency would give the Home Office powers to ignore local authority objections if the plans relate to Crown-owned property. While this all comes as the latest figures show more than 5,000 people have crossed the English Channel so far this year. And in a last-minute deal, US voting technology firm Dominion has settled a defamation case with Fox News just before the trial was due to begin. Opening arguments in the case had been due to start this afternoon, but according to a lawyer for Dominion, they've reached a £633 million agreement. Dominion had originally sought a £1.3 billion settlement from Fox, claiming it spread false information about its voting machines during the 2020 presidential election. The settlement allows Fox News to avoid having a number of its top executives, including CEO Rupert Murdoch and Tucker Carlson, testify in open court. TV, online, DAB Plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's over to headliners.
Hello, welcome to Headliners. I am Simon Evans, and joining me in my perusals of tomorrow's papers, we have Josh Howie and Roger Monkhouse. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent.
I've got years left yet, I reckon.
Club tie, Roger, is that?
Oh, it's actually an old school tie.
Oh, is it?
I'm hoping it might open doors.
Have you noticed anyone catching its eye?
No, I think it's very unlikely
Not here, mate.
to come across
Second
anyone in any
importance,
circumstances, to be honest with you, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a special school of any sort?
I don't know quite what you mean by special school.
Sent there by a judge?
It was a good old-fashioned grammar school. I suspect it's out. I think it's out of the state sector now, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Are they grant maintained?
This explains a great deal about your sentence construction, though, which I've always admired.
What, a good grammar school?
Absolutely,
Damn
yes.
right, absolutely.
Marvellous. Rhetoric.
1946.
That's the foundation stone, isn't it? Well, anyway, let's take a quick look at tomorrow's front pages. We have the Daily Mail. When will someone get a grip on the eco-fanatics? That is not the image there. That's football's new golden boy and his expensive pyjamas. We have the Daily Telegraph. The NHS is broken, declares Starmer, and a journalist who is being held in China, I believe, possibly Russia. We'll have to get onto that. The Guardian, energy firms face curbs on forced meter installations, and a larger picture of that. Yes, it is Russia that the journalist is being held in. The Mirror has killer knives. 5 Tory promises, still kids die. Picture there of the last 5 Home Secretaries. And the Daily Express, you're paying price of rise in fat cat salaries. And the Star, not today, thank you, chatbots. So those are your front pages. So we begin with the Telegraph, Josh, which has virtually the entire day's news on its front page as usual.
I've warmed to the Telegraph over my last year or so on headliners because they just pack all the news there.
Yeah, you don't need to open the thing, do you?
No, it's just there.
Telegraph, it's a crossword on the back, and that's it.
They're also responsible for a lot of genuinely fine investigative journalism over the last few years, more than any other organ I can think of.
There you go.
I've been somewhat converted to this. So some of the stories here, you've got a picture of this US reporter who's been in Russia. You have to look closely, but you can see his hands have got marks from having handcuffs on too tightly. But at the same time, I think he looks quite handsome.
He does look handsome, and actually he looks sort of in command of the situation, doesn't he?
He's just like, he's
quite chill.
I'm in a Russian jail, and I think you should date me. Anyway, that's my...
He might well be coming back to a significantly enhanced fan base, I think.
Good for him, and he's good with the handcuffs now. The other story there, we've got China started developing COVID vaccines weeks before the virus emerged, says a report. Hey, wait a minute. How's that possible? You might think to yourselves, if that doesn't make any sense, because it was just something that came out of the market. Yet they were coming out with a COVID vaccine months before they even announced that it was existing.
So are they saying it was a really tailored or like a general coronavirus?
Yes, exactly.
Lab,
yeah, and the whole point of one of the research labs, as far as I understand it, was to develop an understanding of various coronaviruses,
yes.
And that's why they sourced the various coronaviruses, perhaps, and brought them there, and it's not necessarily suggested. The whole lab theory thing I've heard traduced as a conspiracist nonsense, but it's not necessarily that. Of course, it's just poor biosecurity in a genuine and reasonably based scientific exploration of the various coronaviruses.
So this is the Senate Health Committee in America. There have been a bunch of other various American institutions now that have come out and said, yes, basically probably was the lab. That's the most likely thing. This is yet another institution coming forward to say the same thing. And I've said this before, but I just remember being very sort of snobbish and going, oh, look at this conspiracy theory that it was a lab. No, it wasn't, because I just went along with what the WHO said at the time and various other people. And I guess my anti-Trump
one by one, all your little priors and biases are being dismantled.
What can I say? This whole channel is just set up.
We're going to be revisiting Corbyn any day now.
Mate, they'll take far more to get me to that point.
It's shocking that the WHO still has credibility and funding, though, having been wrong-footed.
Well, their funding's from China,
Chinese.
predominantly.
It was quite interesting to me. I have said this on this channel before, but I think it bears repeating. I understand why certain things are regarded as conspiracy theories, because they have certain implications that might be, potentially very politically sensitive. But the idea that China had unleashed hell on the world via a wet market never seemed to me any more culpable than the idea that it had unleashed hell on the world through poor biosecurity. I mean, to be honest, they have got... I mean, it's like an international operation, this lab. Yeah, it had funding and it had scientists and so on were being brought in from all around the world. I find
and international scrutiny
yeah,
as well.
Absolutely. That's potentially an international failing. The habit of eating, virtually live bats in soup when we know that they have reservoirs in them that harbour potentially life threat, that to me is far more likely to incite racism against the Chinese than the lab leak.
But
you know
either
what I mean?
way,
Which seemed to be the sort of that would seem to be the prospect if you embrace the lab leak.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's been no culpability at all for this. Do you think the effect this had, just the destruction of lives, but the economic and people's quality of living and everything, it's just amazing that they seem to have got away with it.
Well, the truth is, of course, is that sanctions are possible only when you have somewhere else to go. China is responsible for so much of the world's manufacturing now. I suspect if this had happened in a smaller country, which was a more optional election...
We would be bullying them by now and it would all be sorted.
Yeah. Anyway, Roger, let's have a look at The Guardian. What have they got?
Oh, The Guardian's very much a follow-on from this, and that is James Cleverley, who's sent out, the Foreign Secretary, of course, who has warned off the more hawkish Tories about China, specifically, about how we cannot just cut loose. For all the reasons that you've said yourself, they are economically so powerful. To disengage with China would mean, of course, that we wouldn't be able to source reasonably priced trainers or anything else, for that matter, that we depend upon utterly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly an Amazon click-to-buy addict. I can't...
Alibaba would be the more authentically Chinese option, of course.
That's true, but it comes from the manufacturing. We have got... I mean, there's no point in getting sanctimonious about it. We've all developed a degree of it, a kind of an easy attitude towards consumer goods now. That
We're utterly dependent. We're utterly dependent.
Well, it's the same way that the relationship we have with loads of countries like Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Anything that we actually need a country for, we're willing to look the other way.
Absolutely.
And that's fine, but let's be honest about it. Let's not pretend that we're this beautifully, morally...
We started it with the Opium Wars and they've outdone us very effectively, haven't they?
I always said it was revenge for that. We are now the addicts. Absolutely. What else? They got the Fox deal there.
This is a huge story, isn't it? Do you want to read it?
This is the last-minute settlement. This is the...
Fox reaches last-minute $787 million...
It's a large amount of money.
And a libel suit. So the Dominion, which is the company that ran all the election machines during the 2020 American election, basically people on Fox News were saying, oh, it's a conspiracy, and they were actually trying to steal the election and stuff. And this company went, wait a minute, we're going to sue you, and they've won a huge amount of money.
Dominion, to be clear, they didn't just make the machines, they were actually invigilating, the scrutinising, they were running the election itself. It's effectively a sort of, it's been farmed out, or whatever is the term.
Yeah.
And disclosed emails indicate that at very high level at the Fox News organisation, of course, they were caught between their viewership and their management. The management wasn't necessarily
what they knew was the truth. They knew it wasn't the truth. That's
absolutely.
The other thing. But they knew their fan base.
They had no illusions about how nutty the whole Trump operation was. But at the same time, of course, the fans departed en masse, apparently, and they had to give them what they wanted.
The irony, I don't know if it's an irony, but I always felt that there were questions to be asked about the 2020 election, but not about it being not legitimate, but the inclusion of a huge number of postal votes had distorted the results, made people feel deeply suspicious about it. Even Bernie Sanders himself said this is storing up trouble, having all these postal votes from people who wouldn't normally vote. The Democrats sent postal vote ballot papers to people who hadn't requested them, just on the expectation that they would probably vote They would probably, lean Democrat. And quite a lot of important questions to ask about. Is this how we want elections to be? Because there's normally been, in developed countries, something like a third, on average, of the electorate doesn't normally vote because it can't be bothered. And it's not unreasonable to assume those people might not have done the reading, prior to the election as well. It might be democracy running at full steam, or it might be a natural filter.
The suppression of the Biden laptop story is, of course, another massive
But instead,
thing.
by going overboard on this ridiculous idea that there has, actually been an incredibly high, massive conspiracy, it's sort of rendered all that conversation rather, hard to go back and retreat to, I think. But anyway, that's my view. What about killer knives, Josh?
Yeah, killer knives, 5 Tory promises, still kids die. Yeah, so a bunch of the our Home Secretaries have all said that they were going to ban these knives. They're ridiculous, they're huge, they're essentially machetes.
Is that a picture of the 5 consecutive Home Secretaries?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's in the last 3 months, I think.
Well, going back to Theresa May, so presumably that's before she was Prime Minister.
So
she was
of course, directly before.
When she was addressing the police in her leopard skin pumps.
So who did Theresa May appoint as Home Secretary? I don't recognise her, shamefully.
That's Amber Rudd, isn't it?
Of course it is, Amber Rudd.
Go on, Josh.
Anyway, so the point, but what's so ridiculous about it, it's like in America where they have these rifles and they go, I've got these assault rifles because we need them for hunting. Where, of course, But again, it's like these zombie knives, these massive machetes. But you need them for what? Like killing zombies? Like there's no practical application for them.
Are they not quite similar to the largest sort of kitchen knife you can get in TK Maxx?
No, I think this they're more serrated.
Really massive.
And there's just no need for them to exist in this country. Certainly when they're being used to harm and kill children. I mean, it's mental.
Yeah.
They are, and it's mad that this hasn't gone through. I can't see what the reason is for this not to have gone.
So do they remain legal, or is it more a question of their illegality is not being prosecuted with enough enthusiasm and rigour?
I think it's still on they're still on the books. You can still buy them, and they're powerless to act. They haven't actually been outlawed as such.
Well, that is terrible. That is a betrayal. They should get rid of the knives for a start. And finally, Roger, the Daily Star as a little palate cleanser before we go into the break.
The Daily Star is always good value, isn't it? This is the continuing AI story, the anxiety of the head of Google, particularly on this occasion, about how he doesn't even understand how AI works, how AI has taught itself things which it shouldn't know, and we are in grave danger unless BOFs act now. They've abbreviated boffins to BOFs, which I'm not entirely comfortable with.
We are in the grave. We are out of time, unfortunately, Rod, so unfortunately, that may well be the story that's going to end the world, but we don't have justice. We will go into a break now. We will be back very shortly with our more in-depth look inside the papers. We will be back in a couple of minutes. See you very shortly.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. I've got Josh Howie and Roger Monkhouse with me tonight. Let's continue with the stories, Josh. We start with the Telegraph and the ongoing final scenes of Goodfellas drama that has been unfolding north of the border.
Yeah, we're waiting for the heavy metal tune to crash in. SNP Treasurer Colin Beattie released without charge. So, so this is in the Telegraph, but on the front page of the Telegraph, it's also saying the SNP sort of revolting against their new leader to say, hey, are you going to suspend Nicola Sturgeon or not? You've got the now Colin Beattie has now come out from being arrested. He hasn't been charged. No cuffs at the moment. Certainly no Russian tight cuffs. And I guess as it's an ongoing investigation, they're very clear about you cannot say what exactly is going on. We know there's involvement of £660,000 of money, but that's Scottish. Scottish money. So you can only spend it in Scotland. You can't spend it anywhere else. And
I don't know if they've been cooking up meth in that camper van.
Well, supposedly it's a motorhome and it's easily identified. On the side it says we send the EU £350 million pounds a year that can be spent on the NHS.
And buses.
I don't know.
They just can't help themselves, can they?
Exactly.
We also the clip earlier of Humphrey Yusuf coming out fighting and defending the SNP's record against that of the Tory party down south. But I don't know, it feels like they've adopted the moral high ground so decisively that it does, even though nothing is stuck quite yet, it does kind of feel like the wheels are coming off.
Well, the police are screwing every last moment of drama out of it as well. And they've completely upstaged Yusuf and his big day.
They upstaged Taggart.
Indeed, they could upstage the big yin himself, I'm sure, at the moment.
Massive murder tent in the front garden. I mean, that was extraordinary, wasn't it? It was like you expected the patio to come up. I don't quite know what they were doing there.
And the SNP are now so imploding so catastrophically that apparently the Tories are quite worried about the electoral advantage that it gives Labour by potentially winning dozens of seats north of the border.
Right, because it's not going to fall into Tory lap, is it? And if anything, of course, the fear also of the coalition is one of the things that stops people voting Labour.
It's previously worked very well, hasn't it? Yeah. That idea of, was it Ed Miliband being in Salmon's pocket?
Yes, absolutely. It's all 3D chess. Roger, time for the Independent now. Some embarrassment in the mother of parliaments as well as her illegitimate stepchild up north.
This is Simon Case, the Sir Humphrey Appleby of our day, who survived all sorts of scandals and implied sullied reputations already, but he's now been named specifically in a discrimination and harassment lawsuit by a disaffected previous employee called Roa Ahmar. Who has said that she was subject to direct discrimination and harassment on the grounds of her sex and race. This is, who knows whether there's any validity to the claim.
Is it sort of like a bullying thing, or just kept out of a top job, or
it's not specified.
It's not clear.
It's not specified. These are the words of her lawyers. Evidently, it's gone this far, so I guess there's something in it.
Yeah.
He was in the WhatsApp messages, wasn't he?
Very much so, yeah.
And he was never supposedly fined at all with all the parties, even though there's lots of photos of him taking part.
Yeah, it's very odd that
case.
he escaped all that.
Yeah.
It's Teflon, exactly.
Finally, they've got something to stick. OK, well, let's watch this space. It sounds like more might be coming out of there. Telegraph now, Roger, and an inclusivity row with the Women's Institute.
Actually, this it's Guardian for me, this one. No, it's OK. So Women's Institute will continue to celebrate transgender women amid inclusivity row. This is actually their policy since the 70s to include transgender women.
Before it all became a bit kind of drag queen story.
Well, this is it, because the definition of what was a transgender woman has changed. It used to be the transgender woman was someone who had got their certificate, been through 2 years of therapy and whatnot, and surgery.
Yeah.
Nowadays, 95%...
And the practical and the technical.
Yeah, exactly. Now, 95% of people who what we would classify as trans women actually haven't had any surgery, haven't had take any hormones at all. They're essentially me and you in a dress, or just looking like Roger here.
The cat flap hinge has got a bit looser, hasn't it?
Exactly. It's a lot. A lot of people argue it's just essentially transvestites have now been put into that umbrella. So
I'm sure the women's institutes around the country probably all, one or two, ladies in a cardigan and sensible shoes, who, if you looked a bit closely, you might think had quite a well-developed jawline, but it didn't bother anyone.
And now it's
just quite stable.
become a moot. And the CEO of the organisation, Melissa Green, says she doesn't want to be part of this toxic debate. Good luck. If you've got the Prime Minister and you've got Keir Starmer, you've got everybody...
is involved.
Everybody's involved. It's impossible. And the point is, the reason it's become toxic is because it's built up because no one has been debating it.
Yeah.
That's what has led to this point.
And also there's been this kind of... I am, sympathetic, very sympathetic to people who've lived as trans genuinely for years and have just enjoyed a degree of I don't know, anonymity, but, the eye of...
Just getting on with their lives.
Yeah. But it has been a bit of a 50-50 thing, hasn't it? Trying to surreptitiously get the self-ID legislation, just trying to change it so that little bit less, of a commitment, I suppose. It's, a little bit less definitional. Yeah. And I'm not surprised people's radar has started twitching. And it's quite interesting watching William Hague, and I'm looking at you here, Roger, as I've just realised who was watching mine. But William Hague, he was saying, well, of course, you can't allow them to play sport, you can't allow trans women to play sport where they have an obvious advantage. But I do think in the WI, that's a different thing. And I was thinking, this, of course, is why sport was so important to the trans movement, because as soon as you do start to create arbitrary gaps... Yeah.
Trans women are women.
Except in this situation and this one and this one. But here they are, but here they're not. It all starts...
And they can play sport. They just have to play in their appropriate sex class. Yes. That's all it is.
I mean, I would imagine it's going to come down to individual societies, guilds, whatever they're called, institutes.
What, for the women? Well, she's saying that they haven't actually had many complaints or people, it's all support and everything. But I don't think that that's...
How many practical instances it really impacts upon?
Yeah, exactly.
Very few. I mean, it's not going to be the same thing, is it? It's not. This is not really considered to be. But then again, it's absolutely not for us. My mum was a member of the WI for many years. I kind of think she probably would have been fine with it. Or certainly would have been fine with it, as it was 5 minutes ago.
Well, social inclusion isn't really a problem, is it, practically? No. I don't think
so. It's about spaces.
Exactly. There's generally not a swimwear round during...
But she says there's something to learn from women through the eyes of the transgender women, because, they can learn how to wee standing up, maybe.
They can learn how to put a bit of...
Oh, crikey, that calendar girl's pictures might
get that one behind the piano. Back to The Independent now, Roger, and it may be safe to refer to that organ as a newspaper again soon.
This is the story of... hang on, this is...
Well, the Twitter removal
This is a Twitter removal one, yes. This is from The Times, apparently. Twitter have apparently discreetly removed its policy or revoked its policy of removing posts that deliberately misgender or dead-name transgender individuals. This has been done on the QT, and advocacy group GLAAD, G-L-A-A-D, I don't know whether that's an acronym for something, I can't begin to speculate. But, of course, they are up in arms because they believe that it is a decision to roll back LGBTQ safety on...
So the idea is that you'll be allowed to just refer to somebody as the name they had before they underwent a sex change or transition or whatever. which some people do occasionally in a
I can see how that might be used to oppress in a harsh and spiteful manner.
But then other people probably do it accidentally or historically also and get entangled and lose their Twitter account for simply referring to somebody they might not even have known. It's a tricky one.
But also they're calling people that it's becoming less safe for marginalised groups because of it. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's offensive and I'm sure it's annoying and rude, arguably.
Yeah.
But the idea that it becomes less safe for them, that is maybe, I think, a step too far. And
yes,
that is part of being the problem, isn't
it's mixing up offence and physical safety.
Safety is the go-to now if you want something to happen,
Definitely.
isn't it? Because it actually it requires safeguarding issues require immediate action. But I remember being called all sorts of mean and beastly things online over the years. Several things by people who considered themselves to be quite...
kind.
Yes, exactly.
The worst.
So you don't generally feel unsafe, do you?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the problem.
We do talk, of course, about being hurt, don't we? But, of course, that's an emotional thing, not a physical thing.
I don't even know whether... I mean, I suppose there's things like the Caitlyn Jenner, you know, when she became Caitlyn Jenner and was previously Bruce Jenner, an Olympic gold medal athlete. It just seemed extraordinary to me that you were expected to not be able to acknowledge that had been, or to say that when Caitlyn won the men's pentathlon...
When there's a public celebrated history, yes,
it's absolutely just ridiculous. This is the thing. As soon as you start to...
unpick.
Yeah, exactly. Josh, the Times now, at least I don't know, I'm getting all these papers wrong, but anyway, the next newspaper, it looks like an excellent opportunity for a tactical strike may soon present itself.
Oh, yeah, well,
London.
I don't get rid of two groups at once. XR expects 30,000 protesters in London on weekend of marathon. Now, it says Extinction Rebellion, or XR, if you're one of the cool kids, they're going to be coming down to the big one this weekend in London.
Yeah.
30,000 of them. They're saying that they're not going to be messing with the marathon, which I hope they don't, because that's my favourite hangover. I love sort of switching on with the hangover and just seeing all the people running, sweat, and I just feel like I feel really good about my life choices.
Decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Certainly, as we know, a bunch of comics doing it.
XR say they won't be intervening, but some of their splinter groups seem to be slightly less...
the real XR.
Yeah.
Or whatever, provisional XR. Just Stop Oil, you know.
Dead naming them? Extinction Rebellion?
I don't know, we'll find out. Let's do it on Twitter and find out if we get in trouble or not. But yeah, now the XR have basically said they don't want to involve the public in that way or upset the public, because then they've recognised that it's had a sort of counter effect on people.
Well, especially people running. I mean, they couldn't be anything less
more healthy.
Problematic.
Yeah.
Although some people say if you eat a roast beef sandwich and then go for a run, you've actually created more greenhouse gases than if you drive.
Oh, really?
Because of the farming implications of beef, obviously, yeah. I think that'll do for part two. We have still to come some cultural appropriation. MPs consider single-sex school trans integration. Not a trans tonight, and a ban on forced installations. That isn't a trans story, I'm pleased to say. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. We are into our third of 4 sections where I find the most interesting and yet still relatively important stories lurk. Guardian, Roger now, and we did this story last night, but it was covered by a cis woman, so I suppose it's only right we give you a go at it as well.
Oh, do you think my angle will be different or distinct?
You never know.
I'd like to imagine perhaps it was. This is how ministers are preparing to issue top-down guidance for schools regarding the inclusion of transgender pupils, which has previously just been hived out to individual teachers or well-meaning organisations. Consequently, you've got Gillian Keegan, who is the Education Secretary, and Kemi Badenoch's involved as well. About what schools should do, particularly whether it is legal or not for girls' schools to reject applications from transgender students.
So saying from male-bodied students, we would say, who identify as girls, this would presumably be at quite a young age, Josh.
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's around teenagers now who are the most sort of prolific. Historically, it was very, very few boys around that 5, 6, but now it's a lot of...
Having said that, of course, if it's private schools, independent school sector, they go up from prep school to senior school, for our viewers who may not know this, a little bit later, 13.
Yeah.
And so I suppose at that point they might be...
Well, it's a safeguarding issue to have a male-bodied person within a female space.
I'm just thinking of how young do people start identifying as other genders, regardless of how legitimate...
People can, of course, apply much later in the school year sequence, can't they? I mean, you can have 15-year-olds.
It's mostly a secondary school phenomenon in terms of what we're seeing with the numbers now. And so, this needs to be laid out in law, and this is part of what the government are talking about by fixing the EHRC in terms of saying, look, sex when it's mentioned means biological sex, which is then really enforces that these safe spaces are enforced.
There's going to be a great Hollywood comedy coming out about this soon, isn't there? Like you remember the 40-year-old kid goes back to school? There's been loads of those, there's got
might be a few more years
before we can look back and laugh. Guardian again now, Josh. Morgan Freeman. First he came for the Penguins, now for the African Americans.
Indeed, Morgan Freeman says the terms Black History Month and African American are insults. So this is an interview that he did. He's actually mentioned this before.
Yeah.
And the points that he has are, he says, why are we relegating American history to Black History Month? He's talking obviously about America.
Yeah.
But he's saying, why do we just get a month when he sees the two, black involvement with American history is integral? So that's a fair point.
I think that's a very fair point. If he's saying that Black History Month is just some sort of tokenistic and indeed condescending nonsense.
Well, I think that's exactly what he's saying. And then he's saying that African American as a term is a false term or an inaccurate term, and he just likes the term black.
Black.
But that's enough for him. He doesn't need anything more than that, which I think Denzel Washington says something very similar. Also, that he said that I'm proud to be black, but being black isn't all who I am.
But I'm not particularly in favour of the policing of language. If someone says African-American, I mean, it's up to you whether you take offence.
There is always this kind of feeling, though, these things are very rarely grassroots. They're what they call the astroturf, aren't they? Suddenly all these terms change. You think, well, has anyone just decided off their own bat, I'd rather be called African-American than black, or is it coming out of some sort of political agenda? I'm just to play devil's advocate. There is a part of me that thinks somebody like Morgan Freeman, who is a fantastic actor, blessed with enormous charisma, has had some great character roles and a very long career, maybe not the most typical experience of an African-American or black person in America, who might think, actually, if we do just kind of go all American history is just American history, we can see how black contributions to it might sink below the, everything from Armstrong on the moon to George Washington to, FDR, all the presidents prior to Barack Obama have been white. There is a possibility that, it can get lost in the second league of
I think he wants it to be featured prominently, but I think he wants it to be featured prominently through the year.
Yeah.
Is the idea. I don't think he wants it to dissipate.
So Black History Day of the Week, maybe.
Whatever, just Black History Year.
What about Black Friday? Does he say anything about Black Friday?
Well, we stay with abject racism, actually, Roger, in the Telegraph, and disturbing signs that Germany is once again lurching to the extreme right.
Crikey. This is the story of the pensioners' dance group in Germany, of all places, who have been banned from wearing Egyptian costumes in a show because of its supposed cultural insensitivity. This is just a little bit weird, to be honest with you. They've been told that sombreros are offensive, but ponchos aren't.
I mean, it is. I've had a look at some of the pictures. There are a bunch of lovely-looking old German pensioners who are basically putting something on that looks a bit like It Ain't Half Hot, Mum.
Yeah.
There's some slightly old-fashioned... I have no problem with it, but slightly old... They're like outfits out of Gilbert and Sullivan or something. There's sort of a bit Mikado with the parasols and then the...
There's a few old dears dressing up and having the time of their lives, you kind of suspect.
But Germany is particularly sensitive, isn't it? And there are prickly people who are determined that Germany has changed.
Yes, they're dancing like an Egyptian. This is very offensive to the Bangles, obviously, and it's also so now they've compromised where they've removed certain of the more extreme, like the wigs in the Japanese wigs or whatever. But they will be, at the end of it, they'll be doing a discussion at the end where audience members can express their opinions on the costumes, cultural appropriation. And I think, just take me to an Extinction Rebellion protest instead. I'd rather go there than deal with that.
Q&A after the ladies
have their little dance.
Tableau. Do they still play Walk Like an Egyptian on MTV? I don't suppose MTV exists anymore, does it?
I don't imagine
No, it does exist.
No. It does, but it's all just a series of cribs, isn't it?
No, there's still some good videos there occasionally.
Occasionally, OK. Mail now, Josh. We're going to squeeze this one in before the break. Motorists are rising up, literally, against the mighty car.
Indeed. Frustrated motorists are now stealing the Euless cameras in protest over Steakhan's expansion plans. 43 have been vandalised or nicked. I don't know what people are actually doing with them if they steal them. I mean,
there's a
great secondary market. Bristol's buying them for their plans or whatever.
Put some on my stairs.
Yeah, so he says, we're going to report it to the police, which made me laugh.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to do anything. Like they have done anything about any other crimes in London.
I'd like them to get rid of the 20-mile-per-hour cameras as well. I've got to be honest with you. It just makes me feel so absurd.
Well, I don't know whether the 20-mile-an-hour limit's ever policed, to be honest with you.
It is, yeah, there's cameras.
At midnight, about 24 miles per hour, I felt like I was pushing the car as it was, like as in standing behind it. I mean, it's just absurd. And all the taxis, this was on Vauxhall Bridge Road, they all know where the single camera is, of course. They fly up there, jam on the brakes. This is much more dangerous.
Yeah, and they're right up your backside, of course, if you're obediently pursuing the 20-mile-an-hour limit.
But it does feel, I think we talked about this last night, but it does feel to me like there is a massive sense of being persecuted as a motorist now in London. And my car is Euless safe. I'm not being charged for this. I don't need to drive.
It's only old cars, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
But
there are people who need to get around and can't afford to update their car every couple of years, who are just starting to feel like they're getting clobbered.
And it's not just London, of course. I mean, various provincial cities are also introducing clean air zones.
It's bad. They should have waited till all the old people were dead. It looks like we're going to squeeze one more in now, Roger. This is the Tavistock Clinic for Old People. This
is the gas meters. It's we've decided that we're not going to force 85-year-olds. Anyone over 85, is no longer going to have a gas meter forced upon them, even if they don't pay. So that's
this is
good
like a prepaid jobby, isn't it? So
Yes,
the idea
yes.
is you can't use any gas on the Never Never. You've got to pay for it up front.
Well, you only force entry and fit a meter, as far as I understand it, if there's a history of non-payment. That's how it works, basically. Whether or not it's ever justified is another debate, but I think it's reasonable to say that if you have specific medical conditions or are disabled or are particularly dependent, or indeed if you're just over 85, then I think
To be
you
honest,
should be
if you're
exempt
over
from that.
85 and you're still living alone, you are saving the state quite a few...
A massive amount of money.
Anyway,
You should be getting as much gas and electricity as you could possibly consume.
The rates are much more expensive. 600,000 people this year this has happened to, which has gone up massively, like almost double, I think, from it was a year ago.
It's a real tax upon desperation and poverty, isn't it? Awful.
Yeah, so it's very sad. And there's also, if you have refrigerated medication, your dependency on care lines, or there's a lot of different things that they're now going to be essentially banning. But you wonder, how was this allowed before that they could actually break into people's houses and do this?
And yet,
they're
I've been
also
told...
wearing body cams now as well, which I think is an interesting insight into just how they've obviously been behaving. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough for part 3. Final section. Finally, we get onto the killer Hornets, the killer cricket balls, and a hitman who never got a kill. Shame. He did his best. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So we have The Guardian again, and further evidence that if it wasn't for the FBI, there'd be no crime at all.
Yeah, so So FBI arrests guardsman who applied for job on rentahitman.com. This happened, we've heard about this website before. It was set up initially basically as something to do with the internet, like
it's a bait for cryptocurrency sales.
Something like that, yeah. And then it became a sort of a parody website. But then people do occasionally apply for jobs or for people to be killed.
Yeah.
To kill out. So this is someone who went online and said, look, I'd really like to be a hitman, and really went through the whole process.
This is entrapment, isn't it? There's a moral dimension to this. It seems quite unfair.
Well, the guy's been arrested. He went and met with somebody. He was given a couple of $1,000s and said, OK. And also he said, you know, the guy said, do you have any problem torturing people, cutting off their ears? He was like, no, I was in the army. I could do all of that stuff.
Oh, that's it.
And but then he's now saying, oh no, I wasn't going to do it. I've actually accepted a job at a medical centre instead.
Just like, where I've been 7 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I did feel sorry for him. He goes, I want this job. I'm looking for a job that pays well so I can support my kid on the way.
Yeah.
He's going to be a new dad, and he was just thinking, it's about time I sort of really stepped up here.
Yeah, stepped up my murder.
Start putting food on the table.
Shooting someone for money is it's as American as
I don't know which I find worse.
apple pie.
Somebody applying to be an assassin, that's kind of comical in a way. But somebody actually advertising to get somebody killed for them, I don't know, that feels to be a little bit more sinister. If you're looking, I mean, I understand that's how the website has to work.
Yeah.
But that feels to me that should be a more significant crime. Am I wrong there?
No, I think, murder, trying to get somebody...
Calling in a hit rather than...
just being... You're an innocent hitman. You're just some guy. You just want to get paid some money.
Romanticising the assassin.
The assassin's veto.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very new philosophical conundrum. Express now, Roger, and a groundsman very nearly knocked for 6 by the sound of it.
This is quite an exciting day, isn't it, for him? This is a groundsman who has apparently found a live grenade. A World War... I presume this is an old Mills bomb, one of the old pineapples. That's what it would have been. I suppose so. Which would be in some sort of rusty, dreadful state, wouldn't it, potentially?
Yeah.
Partially underground.
They used to flog them on the army surplus stalls at the air shows I used to go to when I was a kid.
They sell all sorts, don't they, of course? I came across a lovely antique shop recently where they were selling all sorts of World War II memorabilia and
World
stuff.
War II. It's got certain presents.
Bayonets and all sorts of potentially lethal
Lots of Nazi stuff. Did you buy?
Never mind the zombie knife. They had proper bayonets. Oh, crikey.
You've got to have the proper gas mask.
Quite an afternoon.
And the smell of perishing rubber.
Yes, that's right. Highly perished rubber. Yes, naturally.
But it didn't blow up anyway. So
it didn't blow up. Everyone went home happy and presumably... Oh, they haven't blown it up yet. Apparently they're going to do some sort of controlled explosion on the site because it's unstable.
I like the fact that it was excavated in Gore Court Road. Gore, G-O-R-E, as in blood and gore. That's quite
in Sittingbourne, so the grenade's not the only unstable thing.
Lots of excitement, isn't there? There's excitement with cricket, there's excitement with snooker.
Yeah.
These sports are really taking off.
Maybe we could get an Extinction Rebellion fella to go down and protest the grenade. Anyway, Daily Star, Josh, it happens every year, halfway between Easter and badminton. Killer Hornet Week.
Oh, yes. Britain should brace for invasion of deadly Asian hornets after 22 nests are found. This is in the Channel Islands, but they've been found in Folkestone, Kent. So I didn't know, first of all, they could kill humans. They also kill our bees.
Bees can kill humans if you're allergic.
Yes.
So, yeah, but they can kill about...
The Daily Star we're talking about here. There's some level of exaggeration.
30,000 honeybees can be destroyed in just a few hours. And we need our bees, obviously, for the pollination they do and the honey and whatnot. But a volunteer hornet hunter, this is a woman who, in Jersey, who obviously couldn't get into that German dance troupe.
Does she dress up like a sort of, like a superhero?
I suspect there's some sort of TV series coming out, for sure, about her. But she trapped it down. But it turns out that the University of Exeter have spent about £500,000 talking about, like, they're going to basically put radio transmitters on these hornets.
Wow.
And that's
just going to facilitate communication between the hives.
They won't crack the code. They're not going to crack it.
Potentially
and it
disastrous.
tracks them back to their nests, and then they can destroy them there, which is a great idea. But these are coming over from France.
Exactly.
From France.
This is exactly the sort of thing that Brexit was supposed
to
stop.
Exactly. This is really the nub of it, isn't it?
Yeah. We don't know if it's deliberately or not.
Not on small boats, as far as we know. No, do they actually fly then across the channel? It's quite a long way for a hornet.
I guess so.
Is that hard?
Via the Channel Islands.
Soft summer
the Channel Islands.
Yes.
These are basically in France.
Well, the Channel Islands are further away than Calais.
50-50. Yeah. It's he said, she said. But, yeah, they're a long way away.
A long way away.
Why don't they just go to France?
Why don't they just accept the historical inevitability of their situation?
It's a lot of job opportunities.
Why do they keep hanging on like a spurned lover?
Talk about the Hornets, not the island. Roger, the Telegraph have news of cosmetic gunk ruining everything once again.
Yeah, this is horrible, isn't it? This is apparently a leisure centre on the Isle of Wight that's been shut down because of fake tan pollution. I think we all know how that happens. If you ever go to a public swimming pool at half term, I mean, you can choke on the vapours of the 15-year-olds with their.
You're spending a lot of time in your leisure centre. 15. Why are you going in half term?
I have children. There's no illicit. There's no illicit purpose. Okay. I'm there for legitimate reasons, along with other members of the public. And I always gag. It's a very unpleasant experience being near teenagers who don't know how to use makeup or
So are you saying, are you quite happily blaming teenagers for this?
Oh, not at all. No,
you don't.
No, if it's fake tan, I think we can assume on the Isle of Wight that it's the urban underclass who are the problem here.
I don't know very much about the Isle of Wight, but it's never struck me as a particularly blighted by urban underclass fake tan kind of
I think it's gone down market over recent years.
Really? Last time I was there, it felt very 1950s. I was thinking, I might take
secure and lovely in that way.
But you've got people putting fizzy bath items in their jacuzzi.
Oh.
That's mental.
God,
it is.
That's crazy.
The whole point of the jacuzzi is it doesn't need an extra...
Yeah, more bubbles.
That's been catered for. Finally, Josh, would you mind leaving the show in an orderly fashion? Do not panic.
I know. 2 lions break out a circus mid-performance and send the crowd fleeing in panic. This is in China, because it's illegal now since 2020 to have lions in our circuses here, which is coincidentally the last time I went.
See, this, for me, is immediately worse than either the lab leak or the wet market hypothesis.
It could be that they're all linked.
Yeah,
it could be they're working on some sort of lion
I wish there was this level
situation.
of jeopardy in circuses in this country still. Because all we get's jugglers and 2 tightrope walkers, isn't it? And if one of them went feral, you'd be quite happy. It'll be a fine way to end.
But if this happened to me if I was at the circus, because I've got 5 kids, I'm going to literally have to pick which one. I can't carry them all.
You should probably have some kind of protocol in place before you attend the event, to be honest.
A lion protocol, yes.
Yeah,
very good. Good thinking.
Just in the event that.
Yeah.
Mummy, why are all the other brothers and sisters wearing training shoes and I have got the heavy diving boots on?
And one kid might be wearing some meat on him.
Yeah.
I won't say which one.
It's great footage, though. You should definitely visit the Daily Star website if you haven't seen it. It's very, very amusing because they're in a big cage and then one of the lions just sort of gets out and at first you think it's part of the optical illusion, a bit like when they do that with the rings and you think, oh no, and now suddenly the rings are together. You know, the lion is inside
the cage. This is a good show.
And suddenly the lion is outside the cage. Oh, hang on, the lion is absolutely... And they do all start leaving in an orderly manner. Most of them, they go,
really?
Well, OK, I'm
How charming.
It's a different cultural way.
Anyway, that's enough for tonight's show. It's time to take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. We have the Daily Mail. When will someone get a grip on the eco-fanatics? We have the Daily Telegraph. The NHS is broken, declares Starmer. The Guardian. Energy firms face curbs on forced meter installations. The Mirror, killer knives. 5 Tory promises, but still kids die. The Daily Express, you're paying price of rise in fat cat salaries. The Star, not today, thank you, chatbots. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Roger Monkhouse. Tune in the same time tomorrow when Leo Kearse will be in this chair and he'll be joined by Steve Allen and Lewis Schaefer. And remember, if you are watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for The Breakfast Show just after the break. Thank you and good night.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The list of resignations and arrests in the SNP continues. But as that party has been so synonymous with separation, with independence, does that mean the campaign is now effectively over? We'll also have a look at an absolutely bonkers plan come up with by the Welsh Government that says young asylum seekers crossing the Channel once they reach 18 would get £1,600 a month of taxpayers' money, along with legal aid. And I'll also ask, after the snooker protest last night and the promise of a summer of disruption, under the Human Rights Act, what can we do to stop the same people disrupting us again and again and again? But before all of that, let's get the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nigel, thank you and good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Home Secretary is set to declare the small boat crisis a national emergency. The move comes in response to a High Court challenge tomorrow aimed at halting government plans to house asylum seekers on an old RAF base in Essex. Braintree Council will attempt to secure an injunction preventing the transfer of 1,700 migrants to the Wethersfield Air Base. The declaration of a national emergency would give the Home Office powers to ignore local authority objections if the plans relate to Crown-owned property. Well, this all comes as the latest figures show more than 5,000 people have crossed the English Channel so far this year. The SNP treasurer has been arrested by police investigating the party's finances. Colin Beattie is the second person to be questioned by detectives who are trying to establish how more than £600,000 in donations set aside for an independence referendum had been used. Earlier this month, the Scottish National Party's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, was questioned for more than 11 hours. Mr Murrell, who's the husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, was released without charge pending further investigation. When questioned in Holyrood, SNP leader Humza Yousaf hit back at the Conservatives.
It is brave, some may use another word for it, when it comes to talking about propriety. Your Prime Minister, your Deputy Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister are all under investigation by the Standards Commission. So yes, while we face challenges, while we absolutely face challenges, I'd rather be standing here with the opportunity to deliver for the people of Scotland rather than languishing in the opposition like Megan Gallagher and the Scottish Tories.
Well, the Scottish First Minister also set out his vision for the country in his first major policy statement since taking office. Mr Eusuf said the party will focus on equality, opportunity and community. He also announced a delay in the deposit return scheme for drinks cans and bottles, as well as a 6-month trial to remove peak time fares from ScotRail trains. Labour's calling on the Prime Minister to publish his financial interests. Parliament's ethics watchdogs investigating whether Rishi Sunak failed to tell MPs his wife might benefit from a major announcement in last month's budget. She holds shares in Koru Kids, a childcare agency likely to gain financially from a drive to recruit more childminders. Number 10 says Mr Sunak will clarify why it was declared as a ministerial interest rather than to the Commons. And charities and campaigners are warning new rules for energy suppliers don't go far enough. Firms across England, Scotland and Wales have agreed to a new voluntary code of practice to help protect vulnerable people. Under the new rules, suppliers must make at least 10 attempts to contact a customer and carry out a welfare visit before a prepayment meter can be installed. The End Fuel Poverty Coalition says the plans failed to deal with energy debt relief for those most in need. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Farage.
Well, what a mess. I've been used to political parties having good times and bad times. I can tell you as leader of UKIP, I had some good days and some pretty rotten ones too. But nothing, I don't think anything like the SNP has been through. Just to remind ourselves of one or two of the timelines on this. It began last year with Ian Blackford stepping down as the Westminster leader. He'd been a familiar feature for a long time. We then, of course, saw Nicola Sturgeon resigning in February. Kate Forbes, who was beaten in the leadership contest, refusing a job, going to the backbenches. The chief executive, Peter Murrell, of course, arrested, and all sorts of questions about the £107,000 loan that he made to the party and a really lovely £110,000 worth of camper van. Well, that's been impounded by the police. That was in his mother's front drive. And it goes on with Communications Chief Murray Foote resigning last month. And really significantly, I thought, on April the 7th, the accountants, Johnston Carmichael, who'd been the auditors, resigned. I've got to tell you, folks, when your auditors walk away, it could be that something is amiss. And today, the Treasurer, Colin Beattie, gets arrested. What's behind it all? Well, it's a Scottish police operation called Branchform, and they're investigating, and quite rightly, possible fundraising fraud within the SNP. Why? Well, £666,953 had been raised since 2017, specifically for a second independence referendum. But it looks like that money's been spent on other activities. After all, there hasn't been a second referendum. So the loan also that was made, £170,000 by Morrow, that was reported late to Elcom. Some of it's been paid back, some of it hasn't. It is a complete and utter mess. I'm not going to tell you on live television where I think this will end, because that might get me into very, very real trouble. Let me make you a promise. This ain't going to end well. But here's the point. The Scottish National Party have become, I think, in the minds of most of us, absolutely synonymous with the campaign for Scottish separation or Scottish independence, whichever word you prefer. And I wonder whether, given this party appears to be in a tailspin that it is not going to come out of quickly, I promise you there's worse to come, I wonder whether the campaign for Scottish separation is now effectively over. Give me your thoughts. Farage@gbnews.uk. Now, I'm very pleased to say that Austin Sheridan, a former SNP Glasgow City Councillor, is brave enough to come on to defend the SNP. Austin, good evening. Your new leader, Humza Yousaf, he said he was the continuity candidate. That doesn't look right at the minute to be a very wise positioning, does it?
Good evening, Nigel. What Humphrey meant by being a continued candidate is sticking with the progressive policies that the SNP have been pursuing, which has allowed us to win election after election after election. As you may be aware, the other candidates were offering different perspectives. They were suggesting that we should move government in a different direction, and some candidates were suggesting that we should abandon the defence of Scottish democracy and not fight Westminster on the Section 35. Whereas for me, the SNP has always been successful when we pursue progressive policies and when we robustly defend Scottish democracy. It's a strategy that has worked for many years, and I don't see why that particular strategy wouldn't work moving forward. What I would say for Hamza is he's had a very, very tough gig, let's put it that way, since he became leader of the SNP. I think that he's proven to be resilient in dealing with these matters. But yeah, I mean, these are difficult times for the SNP, and there's no two ways